Hey everybody, my name's Eddie, and I'm the Handy Homo. I am here in scenic Southern Illinois at my parents' house, and I've got my sister's old car with me. This is a 2010 Corolla LE. She hit a deer with it about 11 months ago. You can see some of the deer fur. The damage was pretty light. I think the estimate was somewhere around $4,000. The goal with this car is to put it back together so that somebody can have some cheap transportation. But first, we're back in Minneapolis, where I have stashed my hoard of junkyard parts at a friend's house in the northern suburbs. The very first bolt I went to loosen snapped off, which I took as an omen. Whenever I use an angle grinder, this is always what's going through my head. Okay, back to this radiator support. So this entire thing was $80, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was gonna get, and this wasn't quite what I expected, but it had what I needed. I just had to be careful not to destroy those parts of it. Despite the initial warning the Toyota gods gave me with that snapped bolt in the beginning, it appears they have smiled upon me, as I was able to get the pieces I needed without mangling them. Time to load up. I instantly started missing the RAM I traded in on this Touareg, but this probably suits my needs on a daily basis more than the truck did. At any rate, we're going to make it all fit. Used parts for a car like this are readily available in the Twin Cities, and I was able to find a hood, door, and a fender in the right color, as well as a headlight, radiator, that radiator support, and 4 used tires at a local auto recycler. Between eBay and Amazon, I ordered a pre-painted bumper cover, as well as hood hinges, a Toyota emblem, the right fog light blink-off panel, the washer fluid reservoir, front license plate bracket, and the front bumper clips. Back at home, time to load up more stuff. In the morning before we left, I finished packing, loaded up the car, took Bradley for a walk, and got coffee, all in about 4 hours of sleep. We were ready. We made our way out of the North Loop, and we hit the highway. And 10 hours later, we pulled into my parents' driveway, where we were promptly greeted by my canine siblings. This is Bruiser. He is my favorite of all of my siblings, including the human ones. I think he's about 10 years old. He's such a sweetheart, and he works really hard for the family, stays up all night keeping coyotes away from the house. The next morning, we went and picked up the Corolla and hauled it back to Dad's. Time to start disassembling him. I say him because my sister named him Bart. She said it was a basic white dude's name for a basic white car. If you're curious as to what I might look like in 33 years, check out my dad. Got the bumper cover pulled off. Pulling out what's left of the headlight. And Dad walked in front of the camera right as I pulled the washer fluid reservoir out. In all fairness, I really didn't explain to him why I had a camera set up. I just said I was doing a video project and ignore the camera. Removing the hood. The fender. Then I started the process of separating those spot welds on the crunched radiator support. Fitting the donor piece. I gotta save that mirror for the replacement door. And getting that door pulled off. Bradley walked by, inspected our work, then decided he was on break. I can tell someone's been in here before because this horn's not mounted where it's supposed to be, so we'll just stick it where it goes. I thought a lot about how I was going to reattach this piece to the radiator support. Maybe if I was a better welder, I could have tried tacking it together with Dad's arc or wire welder. Or maybe if I was a welder at all. Maybe Dad could have done it, but I knew we were more likely going to burn up some thin sheet metal if we tried. I was worried aluminum rivets might get sheared off eventually, and Dad agreed, so we bolted it together with stainless steel hardware and lock washers. This is not a structural part of the car that protects people in a crash, it's just holding the radiator, headlights, and bumper cover in place. The new hood hinges arrived, so I got those installed, and Dad helped me put the hood on. Getting that fender hung and doing some minor adjustments to make the bolt holes line up. During those adjustments, I got into a fight with a rubber hose and lost.
Washer fluid hose. It just keeps swinging no matter, like, I'm not even touching it and it just keeps going in front of the hammer. Latch it. Latch it down. Wow. That actually looks alright.
Adjustment ain't down in that, but
After inspecting the gaps around the hood, it was decided more adjustment was in order.
Looks really good over here.
just a hair high, but it's a whole lot better than it was.
Installing the headlight. And the washer fluid reservoir arrived. I got it installed so I could hang the bumper cover. This bumper cover was the single most expensive part for this project. I searched high and low for a used white one, but there's not really much of a market for used bumper covers. I found this on eBay, pre-painted for $360 shipped. What I didn't see until after I made my purchase was that it was going to be folded for shipping. What I also didn't see until after was the seller's feedback and all of the pissed off people who received bumper covers that weren't the right color and or were damaged by the folding. In my case, it was both. The bumper covers just a shade off, and it had cracks in the plastic and the paint at the inside corners of where the headlights meet from the folding. I sent the seller a message with some photos and explained that due to the timing of my project, I was stuck and I needed to make this bumper cover work, but I wanted some credit for the damage, and they ended up refunding my entire purchase amount. So, I think this free bumper cover is absolutely perfect. The mounting holes for the bumper cover didn't quite line up, so I decided some bigger adjustment was needed. Please, for the love of God, do not do this. I got extremely lucky that I didn't rip that out of the car. I wasn't nearly as familiar with that tractor as I needed to be to use it like that, and what I probably should have done was use a large ratchet strap between the car and the tractor so I could better control the force, or better yet, not do that at all. But this is what I did, and I couldn't help but feel like the Toyota gods were looking out for me yet again. I don't like the gap between the hood and the bumper cover, but that's as good as it's going to get. I think a lot of it has to do with how the bumper cover still got some deformation from where it was folded. But regardless, the bumper cover was free, and it still looks better than the one that was pulled off of the car. All right, we're going to start cleaning old Bart. Got his wheels off, dropped those and the used tires I picked up off in town to get those mounted and balanced. So he's sitting here in the garage on jack stands, and we're going to see what we can do about all of this. So we're just gonna go through this and see what we can do to change its life. This car wasn't always like this. He was usually full of stuff too. Now, I want to make it clear that I'm not trying to throw shade at my sister. I don't think this car is representative of who she is as a person. She's a brilliant, intelligent human being with a giant heart and an amazing sense of humor. She's had this car for a very long time, through quite a few different phases of life. From the 21-year-old college graduate who bought him to the 32-year-old who limped him home after hitting a deer, a lot of life has been lived in this car, and it seems much of it was spilled down the center console. Speaking of, I pulled the center console apart so I could clean all the gunk from between the pieces. Then, I dumped a bunch of water in my lap.
Hey, Edward.
Yes, I call myself Edward. I spent a couple of hours washing him. It doesn't really show well in the video, but he's totally oxidized and chalky. He was also covered in black mold and green moss, as it seems nature was starting to reclaim him. Once I had him clean, I spent a good chunk of a day with a handheld buffer and some cutting compound to remove the oxidation and stains from the paint. As I make my way down the car, you can see the difference in the paint once the oxidation is removed. Then it was time to shampoo the inside. These drill brushes you can get from Amazon are amazing and definitely saved me some time on this car. I gotta say, the Toyota mouse fur upholstery cleans up pretty well. And here's some of what came out. Up until this point, I thought I wasn't going to have to replace that radiator, but then I found a coolant spot under the car in the garage, and the radiator's leaking on the driver's side, which is the other side from where it was hit. I know my sister was having to add coolant to the car pretty regularly before the deer, and I'm hoping that this is why. All I know is that it's leaking now, and I brought a radiator, so it's getting replaced. If everyone has their own personal hell, mine will include having to remove and install the tension clamps Toyota uses on hoses without the right pliers.
You hung on. Oh, finally.
Once it was all put back together and filled up, I took it out for a test drive. The coolant leak was gone, but on the test drive, I discovered the car had a few other issues. One issue we discovered as soon as we started it when we loaded it up at my sister's is that it's got quite a bit of top-end noise. It was about 2 quarts low on oil, and I'd hoped that an oil change and a proper amount of oil in it would help. And although it's not as noisy as it was when I started it that first time, it's still noisier than it should be. Additionally, it needs strut mounts and struts all the way around. Both front CV axles are popping, and the rear brakes are nearly metal to metal, as well as fully out of adjustment. After that, Judy, my stepmom's mom, stopped by the house. I polished the headlights of the Corolla off camera, and they turned out pretty well. So I offered to polish the headlights on Judy's car, as they had been a previous topic of conversation. This is a 2001 Toyota RAV4L that has nearly every option. It was actually my stepmom's car when it was new. Back in 2001, my parents had ordered one of the first, brand new at the time, PT Cruisers. After months of delays, they were frustrated. They canceled the order on the PT Cruiser, and they ordered this RAV4 as it could come in 6 weeks. I feel like they dodged a bullet with that PT Cruiser. There's no way it would have lasted 268,000 miles like this particular RAV4 has. They had it for a few years before selling it to Judy, and for its age, it's in remarkably good shape. Good as new. After that, I did a final wash on the Corolla, and I cleaned under the hood, all of the door jambs, around the trunk, and cleaned the gunk from around the sunroof. This has to be like one of 3 Corolla LEs I've ever seen with a factory sunroof, and I used to work at a Toyota dealership when these were new. And then, one of my parents' dogs got hit in front of the house.
Oh no!
She's fine. It seemed to scare her more than anything. It sure scared the people in the car that hit her, who were nice enough to stop and even pulled in the driveway and talked with us for a few minutes. I'm hoping this prompts my parents into figuring out a way to keep the dogs out of the road, as the invisible fence has proven ineffective. Almost done. I dressed the interior plastics with some leather protectant, which I found does a better job and doesn't leave a greasy residue like most interior dressings. After I finished, I parked the car out of the way, got cleaned up, and met my sister for dinner and let her pay. The next morning, Bradley and I headed back to Minneapolis. Oh yeah, you probably want to see how the car turned out. Is it perfect? Not at all. But it's 1,000 times better than it was. It's a 14-year-old Corolla with 250,000 miles on it. But it went from nearly worthless to something somebody will be happy to have. It'd be a perfect car for a 16-year-old, or someone who just wants a cheap beater with a heater. Hell, even the air conditioning works. This was my first time shooting and editing a video like this. I enjoyed making it, and I learned quite a bit. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see future videos from me. I want to give a big thanks to my dad, who let me take over his garage for a week to fix his ex-wife's daughter's car, and to my sister for trusting her big gay brother to get Bart back on the road. See you next time.